Hello, welcome to the session called Mapping Climate Equity and K-12 Environmental Education Programs. My name is Gina LaMotte, and I'm the founder, Chief Innovation Officer, and President of EcoRise.
My name's Helen Toledo. I'm the project specialist working on our Gen Thrive initiative at EcoRise.
We have a lot of information and resources for you, and I just want you to note that we have our email addresses here at the beginning, and we have them again at the end of the presentation. We also have our website at the end of the presentation, and since this is pre-recorded, we will be happy to send you any of the resources that we share with you, the links to different tools, and follow up with any questions that you might have. Minimize this here real quick. All righty. So we have 60 minutes today, and I wanted to make sure that you had a little bit of context as to what EcoRise is. We'll then cover the project Gen Thrive and the work that we've been doing with mapping and data visualization. We'll give you a deep dive into the data visualization tools that we use currently and the ones that we built out in previous years for reference, and then be able to share how GIS can be used in the classrooms to engage students. EcoRise is a nonprofit organization. We're based in Austin, Texas, and our mission is to mobilize a new generation of leaders to design healthy, just, and thriving communities for all. We were founded in 2008, and we support schools throughout the entire country with programs that are very comprehensive, but ultimately are really about elevating student voices and introducing concepts of sustainability, climate justice, and green careers. We have a suite of different curriculum, as well as teacher training and student innovation grants that span quite a few topics. Our sustainable intelligence curriculum is sort of our flagship program. It runs from kindergarten through 12th grade, teaching environmental topics of waste, water, transportation, public spaces, energy, et cetera, and has students conducting environmental audits of their campus and communities. We also have other curricula, biomimicry for science, green building program for high school students, some new environmental justice lessons that just came out. And all of these projects and programs are really all about introducing students to the relevant information and skills that they need for the 21st century. This is just a little snapshot of our footprint across the US. So we do have programs in all 50 states, and the little stars represent some of the areas where we have a concentration of teachers and schools. And one of the things that's really fun for us is the students end up producing their own solutions to local sustainability challenges, and then presenting them to our staff and our program team to pitch for funding. And we give away grants every year. I think to date, it's over $200,000 that we give to projects, no more than $500 per project. And the students end up having the funds then to implement these projects on their campuses and in their homes. We have the students measure the triple bottom line impact of their projects. And so they are also giving us data around how much environmental savings their projects have resulted in, what the social impact is, and even what the financial impact and savings are for the districts, the school districts. And some of our latest areas of focus over the last couple of years have been, of course, supporting teachers and students with remote learning and blended learning resources. Even providing virtual internships and PD. We have a number of initiatives around racial equity, including the environmental justice curriculum, as well as teacher training. The posters that you see to the right are posters that we produce that are free for anybody to use with stories and lesson plans around them. We have a number of programs and initiatives around green careers and exposing students to green jobs, particularly in green building, but we're expanding that. And this includes paid internships and mentorships with local design firms. We also have a real focus on youth action and how young people can really be put in positions to advise and inform the ways that local offices of sustainability are implementing sustainability plans in their cities. So we have a few different mayors' youth councils, one in San Antonio, one in Austin, and a former one in Houston from this past summer. And finally, we have a focus on systems change. And this is where the project Gen Thrive comes into play, which we'll share a little bit more for you about. So there are 150,000 schools across the US. And as we all know, there is an urgent need for climate action and leadership. The intent of Gen Thrive is to really step back and say, how many schools in the United States are teaching environmental literacy? How many students are experiencing this type of education? And how many of our organizations are there out there in the field? So we want to essentially conduct a really thorough landscape analysis as to the state of K-12 environmental education in this country. We also want to use this data to build and encourage strategic partnerships among our nonprofit organizations, as well as across sectors. How can we join forces with corporations, foundations, government entities to be able to really ensure that all students receive this type of education? And finally, how can we use maps and data visualization to really step up our game when it comes to sharing the need for this type of education and increasing support across the country for our work and for this type of education in our schools. When we first conducted Gen Thrive, which was in 2019, we had really an approach of sort of come one, come all, whether you represent outdoor education, health and wellness, children and nature, environmental justice, green schools. We really wanted to sort of break down the silos and kind of subgroups, if you will, of folks working in the field of environmental education and use the broadest terms possible, the largest umbrella possible to ensure that we were capturing all of what we kind of consider, cousins of the sustainability movement. So there was a huge net cast for participation. And the intent was really to end up using this data to first and foremost support the strategic growth and impact of environmental education service providers, but also using this data that we collected to help foundations better understand what are the different programs out there, of course, helping school districts understand how to better connect and identify resources that they can bring into their schools. Helping the cities and offices of sustainability know what programs are out there and the community at large. So when we started the project in 2019, we started in the state of Texas. We then expanded to Louisiana the following year, and soon after brought on 8 additional states, all representing essentially the South and Southeast at this point. So we have collected data for 10 states, over 900 organizations that offer over 925 unique programs. And then we built out some technology tools, one being ArcGIS Maps, another the interactive dashboard and directory, and that includes a field trend analysis. A quick snapshot of the climate equity and environmental education map is here to your right. It is indicating a few different things. You can see the shades of teal, which represent the environmental education programs and density. So which areas of Texas in this case have the most concentration of these types of programs. Also the headquarters, you see in the red dots for those organizations. We also were tracking schools engaged with environmental education. And then with that, being able to really look at a number of other map layers around social vulnerability and equity, environmental pollutants, climate risk, public health, industry and green jobs, and quite a few other factors. But this was ultimately, the map in general was ultimately really trying to help us make the case for how our type of education and programming relates to all these other issues of environmental justice and social justice, of health and jobs. And then second, we built out a dashboard and directory, and this is more kind of internal facing. So in partnership with the University of Texas, we built this dashboard that allows service providers or schools or funders to search all of the different providers, both the organizations and the unique programs that they have, to be able to search and find different resources in their community, as well as see these field trends that are happening in their region. I'm going to now hand the baton over to Helen.
All right, so next I'm going to provide a tour of our current tools and resources that we use for data visualization and mapping. Everything that I'm about to show here is hosted on the Gen Thrive webpage, and we'll provide links for this at the end of the presentation today. But just so you all know, this is something that's open and accessible that you can explore on your own time if you'd like. So just as I'm scrolling through, we have a little bit more information about Gen Thrive. And we also include some tutorials on how to use each of the resources that I'm going to show you today. And the first one that I like to start with is our climate equity and education map. The purpose of this map was to explore the connections between environmental education programs, schools, equity, health, and other factors within our community. We have a number of layers that are included on this map here. The first tab is all of the layers that has to do with schools. And this is Texas specific, but you can turn this layer on. It shows all of the K-12 schools in Texas. The orange dots that are currently on are the Environmental Education Organization headquarters. And this teal layer, the different shades of teal here, are the program density for the environmental education opportunities that are within the state. This next tab here is all of our environmental factors. So this includes climate risks. You can turn on different layers like tornado tracks. Might just take a moment to load here. All of the tornado tracks. We have hurricane information. We also have environmental pollutants like hazardous waste sites. Brownfields, air quality conditions. And then we also have some layers including energy and food. Our last tab is the demographics and community-based information. So this has like demographics and equity, health care, different health issues such as obesity, diabetes, asthma. We have some layers on voting and community infrastructure as well. And just to speak a little bit more to the two layers that we have on currently, the orange dots, the environmental education organizations, and the teal showing the program density. With just these two layers, we're really able to see where the areas in Texas have lowest access to these services and where we might want to merge our focus to in the upcoming years to provide more programming and opportunity for these areas. The next resources that I'm going to share is our field trends and resource directory. This allows people to understand the trends and gaps within the services that our environmental education program providers have. And this is just our dashboard live. You can see that we have some different pie graphs, bar graphs, and another image of our map here. And you can filter all of the organization and program information by different types of data, including like environmental themes, air quality, conservation, if they have standards alignments, and location, etc. And if we choose one of these, just takes a moment to update, but you'll see that it kind of arranges the graphics to sort out exactly what you're looking for. After applying different filters, it will adjust the organization and program records in these tabs here. And you can export this information for yourself or to share with others, depending on your needs. Lastly, I want to highlight our K-12 climate policy map. This was created in partnership with the Aspen Institute and their K-12 Climate Action Initiative. And what we wanted to do was explore and compare the status of different K-12 climate resilience policies. And this includes net zero goals, green career pathways, sustainable food, and many more. And just a little bit more about this map. You can see at the layer turned on is the total number of policies per state. And if we click on one, a pop-up box will appear. And this just provides some more in-depth information about the data that is being visualized on the map. So now I'm going to hand it over to Gina. She's going to share some tools with you that we've used in the past for additional data visualization options.
So now I'm going to show you a few of the tools that we used for data visualization in 2019. This was the first year that we had conducted the GenThrive survey in Texas. We had about 80 organizations that participated. And this is one of the tools that we looked at for visualization. It is Tableau. Tableau has a public version as well as a private account you could have. And the public gallery here is free, so that's great. However, on the other hand, anything that you produce will be available and searchable to the public. So it's just something to keep in mind. Here you can see we had asked the various service providers what their programs entailed. And so to the top right corner, you can see the program focus area bar. And it showed us that 72 programs focused on outdoor learning and 72 focused on conservation, 49 focused on water, only 4 focused on workforce development. So you could see sort of the breakdown of the programs here. You could also see the ages served. Majority were serving like basically elementary school, and also looking at products and services. So what are the various products and services that different organizations were offering schools? Most of them, the majority, were offering field trips. Very few were offering grant funding. And you can see the footprint of each organization, how many schools they reached that year, and then a breakdown of the different organizations, and looking at all the programs that they offered. What were the different products and services that they offered to schools in Texas? So this was a tool that is very similar to the dashboard that Helen showed you before. The difference is that Tableau has a lot of different customization that is offered, and it is pretty complicated to build. It's something you definitely need to get trained in. It's a bit of a learning curve. On the pro side, the plus side, they also have a pro bono support platform, which connects you to Tableau volunteers that can offer up to 10 hours of volunteer time to help you build your dashboard. So we utilized a gentleman who volunteered to build this for us, which we were happy with. And on the other hand, we were unable to ever edit it or do anything about it afterwards, which is one of the reasons why we moved to the different dashboard that Helen showed you. So this is Tableau. It's also really neat to go to the gallery and be able to look at other different dashboards that people offer, just to give you inspiration and ideas. This tool is called Kumu, K-U-M-U, and it is a networking map. So you see all these funny little spinning orbs and organizations. They're clustered around whatever sort of filter or factor that you want. So here, I'll zoom in. We have clustered them around, I believe, their organizational headquarters city, right? So here we have the city of Houston in the middle. These are all organizations that are based in Houston around this cluster. And each of these little nodes is, or each city node is connecting to an organization that's headquartered there. The size of the circle is indicating how many organizations or programs, how large of the footprint the organization has. So, larger dots indicate the fact that they serve more schools. And then the sort of color coding around the outside has a legend here. So it's showing you what age groups that they're serving. Now, if you were to click on one like Urban Harvest, it'll show you a quick drop side menu rather of basic information, whatever you decide to tell it. And the neat thing about Kumu is, although it looks a little bit crazy when you look at it and first open it, you can filter by all different things. So if you go over to the settings, you can color code. Right now we have it color coded by groups, but you could color code it by a number of different things. They can be connected by, rather than the city, the region, you can connect them by sector. So it'll tell you who's a nonprofit versus government, et cetera. You can also end up creating different sizes for different elements that have a numeric factor. So there's a lot of ways that you can manipulate this. And one thing that's really neat about Kumu that we're excited to expand upon this coming year is you can end up showing secondary relationships. So we could have nodes between the different organizations and who is working with certain government entities or foundations, or which ones belong to certain associations. So that's really neat. Finally, a bit more basic, we also took this data and just made some graphic visualizations ourselves with graphic designers. So here we had taken the information and created graphics around, sector, service area, revenue breakdown. We used word cloud here, which I'm sure you've probably seen before. And word cloud is really useful to see which terms come up most frequently. So here we asked, what terms do you use to describe the work that you use? Or I'm sorry, what terms do you use to describe the work that you do? Most people said that they were associated with the terms outdoor education, STEM education, environmental education. Very few referenced environmental justice or social justice or youth development. We also had designs that we created around a lot of the same information you saw on the dashboards earlier. But this just has a bit more customization and was presented as a PDF for people to share and print if they like. And then another piece that we had done in the first year was really collect a lot of qualitative data. So we asked people what types of collaborations they're interested in, and then perceptions of the movement. What did they believe are strengths of the broader environmental education movement and major challenges? And finally, if they could wave a magic wand, what would be the first thing that they want to do to change or improve the field or the movement? So this is not, pretty graphs and visualizations, but it is a really neat way to be able to share information that is engaging, that helps readers, really dig into the information a bit more in a creative way. All right, so we just shared a little bit about where GenThrive is right now and where it has been in the last couple of years with data visualization. Now looking ahead, I'll give you a little sneak peek as to what is on the agenda. We're going to be supporting additional states to take on the GenThrive project as well and be able to support them with their own data collection needs and the visualization especially. So providing maps and the GIS maps as well as the directories and dashboards for state partners. We will also be launching a national initiative to collect surveys from those providers that work across states. So we should have data on all 50 states, some organizations that are active in all 50 states, as well as sort of these deep dives at the state level with our partners. We will be expanding student engagement activities, ways in which classrooms can get involved in using the GIS maps. And then we'll be enriching the data collection and maps. We in particular are interested in finding more ways to connect youth and classrooms to green career exploration opportunities. We will be collecting qualitative data and stories from communities, specifically how young people are experiencing climate justice issues in their own communities and being able to add this personal storytelling component to the quantitative data that is typical of GIS maps. We are partnering with school districts to map campus level data and be able to create reports for campuses and districts as a whole and share a strategic plan for climate equity and environmental education at the district level. And finally, we are supporting the work of offices of sustainability and municipal goals so that our GIS maps are connecting to the various climate action plans and pillars that various cities have. So if you're looking to conduct landscape analysis of environmental education in your communities, here are some tips and lessons that we have learned. First of all, user feedback is absolutely essential. Who is this ultimately intended for? Is this for the service providers? Is it for the schools? Is it the community at large? Really taking the time to have those conversations and understand what are their pain points, how can this project really support them and move their mission forward is critical. I think that, we personally had a lot of workshops before, during, and after about how our various tools could be more valuable to many different types of stakeholders, from the schools to the service providers to the offices of sustainability and even funders. And early on in our project, we actually paid people to participate in the survey. It wasn't much, it was like $25 or so, but it was really a means in which we were trying to, really recognize the value of their time. All of us probably don't have the most fun conducting surveys, filling out forms. So anything we can do to make sure that this is worth their time and really results in something valuable is absolutely critical. The other one is that there's a balance to be struck when it comes to the survey questions, and being extremely thoughtful about them is essential. When I say that there's a balance to be struck, there's sort of the inclination to ask everything under the sun within the first round of surveys, because there's so much information that you're interested in. There's so many people that want to investigate certain components, whether that's program quality or organizational capacity or whatever it might be. And if you ask too many questions and it lasts too long, it is going to cause people to drop off. If you ask questions that require inside knowledge from program details and impact to operations and finance, you may find people that are taking the survey might not have the information or purview over all this information to be able to share the data. And also when it comes to the actual questions themselves, when you ask a question and you offer a certain number of options, what environmental topics do you teach? And then you list 10 different topics. There's always going to be 11, 12, 13, 14 other specific things that people say are not represented. And we live in a huge diverse world. And so this is pretty inevitable, but when finding that discretion and that balance between trying to be as inclusive as possible, but not exhaustive is really challenging, to be honest. So that's just something to be really cognizant of as you're formulating your questions. Another inevitable truth is that data collection is very messy, and being a stickler about the data controls is super helpful. If you can really be consistent in how the data is being written, from what is uppercase to lowercase, whether it has a hyphen, the formatting is so essential. If you are using all this data to then put into any sort of data visualization resource or tools, getting to this level of nitty-gritty detail is critical. And also in terms of the way people can input information, open-ended sentences, places where they can put other and then fill in a blank, will really create a lot of complexity to the data collection. And so just being cognizant that that's a heavier lift on the back end is really important. And finally, offer variety. When you're making this data accessible, via maps or via a directory or whatever format it takes, we believe that the more sort of options you can have, not always the better, but a few of them is really useful, because not everybody can get the same, value out of a GIS map. It is very valuable for certain applications and not for others. And so having a good, 2, 3, 4 different tools will allow your body of work and data analysis to be accessible and useful for different types of audiences and the functionality that they need. Okay, shifting gears, we are going to share some of the ways in which we have used GIS in the classroom and additional resources that you may find useful from other providers, so that this can be something that is really a student engagement opportunity. I wanted to start with just telling you a little bit about our first foray into bringing GIS into the classroom. We partnered with AT&T and launched a pilot just this year. I think it was April, May. We launched in Southern Florida a project with a couple of high school classrooms. And the intent was really to partner with AT&T and this very, very robust climate data set that they have for GIS maps, and integrate it into our GenThrive map that we already had, and see how we could create experiences for students that were really empowering and gave them a very relevant and just sort of different approach to STEM education and youth empowerment. So what we did was work with a couple of classrooms for a few weeks, and they ended up engaging in 3 different data sets: inland flooding, coastal flooding, and high velocity winds, with the intent of understanding how that intersects with social vulnerability in their communities and identifying ways in which they could recommend solutions for climate resiliency in their local communities. So with that, I'm going to hand the baton over to Helen.
Thank you, Gina. This is our climate resilience and community change story map. This is the platform that we used for the AT&T Climate Resilience Project. And just a little bit of background, a story map allows us to embed all of those GIS interactive maps, and adding different multimedia and text and video and things like that to really bring that map to life and create a story around it. So I'm just going to give a brief run through of what this lesson looked like and how the students and teachers were able to interact with the data provided. We start out with providing a little bit of context of what exactly a story map is. Not many of us have seen one of these before, or let alone used one. We outlined the objectives of the project and what we were hoping to get from the results of exploring this data. We then asked some engaging questions just to kind of wrap our minds around why are we asking these questions? Why do we need to review more data around climate change? What are our current risks? Have you seen any of these risks in your community? And have you been affected by them? Then we got into the fun part where we were able to explore some of these data sets that AT&T provided. And as Gina stated earlier, they were around high velocity winds, coastal flooding, and inland flooding. And it was the estimated measurements of these effects over a 50-year period as a result of climate change. So this map on the right here, there's different layers that the students could toggle on and off. For example, and you can zoom in a bit. This map includes different street names. The students were able to search their schools or neighborhoods, and then click on the pop-ups of each of the icons to get a little bit more information about the data provided. We also included a video on how to navigate this map and step-by-step instructions of using the map as well, just to try and highlight different learning types. So after the students were able to take a look at this data, we wanted to tie in the importance of understanding social vulnerability and how some of these factors might disproportionately affect different areas within our community. So this layer that I just turned on here is the Social Vulnerability Index. And this is outlined by a bunch of different factors and then aggregated to a single number to represent high or low social vulnerability within a community. This image on the left here, it includes socioeconomic status, household income, and composition, minority status, and housing type, and access to transportation. So this is another layer that the students could explore. These pop-ups here have different graphics and information regarding what the Social Vulnerability Index is. They could also review what each color represents on the legend as well. And again, we had more context information on the left if they'd prefer to read through it as well. So now that we've had the opportunity to explore the data, we really wanted to hone this in and bring it close to home and understand how this may be affecting the people around us. So we included some videos here. We also had some supplemental readings and some stories of people who were sharing their experiences of dealing with the effects of climate change. We then wanted to provide opportunity for change. We now know what all of the barriers are, what all of the problems that may be coming or currently affecting us. And it's really important for us to lead with what we can do. And we provided some videos on youth action and what students can do now. And we also included some reports and different different flyers and current youth activists that the students can relate to a little bit more and figure out what they can do now. We wrapped up our lesson with asking the big question: why does all of this matter? Why did we take the time to review this data, see how people are being affected? Like what can we do? Why is AT&T collecting this? And we really wanted to hone in on the importance of discussing the impacts of long and short-term implications of climate change, and also addressing that reviewing these levels of risk within the community and having these conversations now can help us utilize the data and information provided to create and enact data-driven decisions and help us all create a more climate resilient society. So now that we've had the opportunity to view some of the ways that GIS can be integrated in the classroom, I just wanted to highlight a few things to keep in mind and what I think is important to highlight when using these types of resources. The first is that GIS and database software integration allows for the addition of critical thinking components within our lessons. And this can be specific to data sources, being more critical of where the data is coming from, as well as data visualization. Why is this data being viewed the way it is? Is it being over exaggerated? Is it being analyzed correctly? And really just having a better understanding of the resources of where our data is coming from. Another thing that I like about it is that it allows student-facing lessons where the students get to explore and manipulate the data themselves and come to conclusions on their own. Lastly, it makes data more accessible rather than sifting through spreadsheets and a bunch of numbers and doing calculations, which is always very much needed. It's nice to see it in a new and transformable way, such as the interactive web map applications or the story map that I had shown earlier. One thing to keep in mind is the file size or just the rendering time of some of the data sets provided. If you're using a larger data set, it'll take longer to load. And sometimes in areas that don't have as much stable internet, it may take away from the lesson a bit. So that's just one thing to think about before integrating these types of resources, just being mindful of the area that we'll be using it. So next, I'm just going to share a few of the resources and tools that are accessible for instruction. The first is the Esri GeoInquiries. These are short standard-based activities for teaching map-based content commonly found in our textbooks. And each of these lessons are aligned with national standards. They typically take about 15 to 20 minutes to complete. So it's a perfect opportunity to ad-lib a little bit to some of the current lessons that you have and provide some new ways to visualize data and explore the content that you're already teaching. The one thing that's really nice about GeoInquiries is that the vast majority of them are free and they're accessible through a shareable URL. I'm going to take a second here to show you the GeoInquiries webpage. And you'll see that it's divided into many different educational sectors. And I'll click on environmental science, for example. And let's choose deforestation. So it has the activity name, it has the standards alignments, and it has the students' learning outcomes. The URL for the map is embedded right into the PDF here. And then it's followed with all of the directions that are needed and even some next step questions that you can ask to continue the conversation and continue the thinking around the lesson that you're teaching. Next is the Esri story maps. So this is what was used for the AT&T Climate Resilience project that I shared a little bit earlier. Story maps allow you to create inspiring, immersive stories by combining interactive maps and other multimedia content. And there's multiple uses for the story maps as well. So it can be used as a lesson plan, much like the one that I had shown earlier. Or it can also be used as a building block for student presentations. And it gives your students more creativity and allows them to take a deeper dive into the data and ask and answer questions around it. Story maps also have a ready to use gallery, which is this website here. And this is just showing some of the different topics that they're categorized by, causes and advocacy, nature and environment. And if you click on it, it takes you into an album of many, many, many story maps that you can use as a supplemental reading resource or any other way that you may find suitable for your current lessons. Next is Google Earth Pro. I know we're probably all fairly familiar with Google and all of the different apps and things that they have to offer, but Google Earth, this is the desktop version. It has the opportunity to show historical aerial imagery. There's a bunch of preset layers that can be added to toggle on the map to view different things. And there's even the availability to overlay 3D models and historical imagery as well. And there's also a web-based version. This is pretty similar to the Esri story maps with the storytelling capabilities and ready-to-use stories. And one of the things that I like to highlight is the time-lapse tool. It's a zoomable video that allows you to see how the Earth has changed over time. And I just pulled it up in this tab here. This is specifically for the Columbia Glacier Retreat, and it shows how it's changed in the past 30 years or so. So this is a prime opportunity to show students the long-term impacts of climate implications that may not be as easily understandable or viewable through, reading content or looking at numerical statistics.
All right, thank you everybody for joining us today. I just wanted to share one last time, here's our website where you can find the maps and the directory and Kumu and all the goodies at ecorise.org/GenThrive. There's also a contact form in which you can reach out if you're interested in working with us with state mapping or any other type of data collection. And our personal emails are below. I know that we, in this pre-recorded format, are not able to send you links in a chat box, but we will be more than happy to share anything that you're interested in finding if you couldn't find it through the presentation today. Again, good luck with all of your endeavors, and we look forward to hearing from you.